Why and how thoughts affect matter. Every human is a creator. Written and read by Bernhard Kutzler. Thoughts have an effect in the physical universe. Therefore, it matters what you think. Below, I explain why and how thoughts influence matter. Raise your right arm. How did you do it? Maybe you believe you commanded your muscles. But you didn't. Unless you are an expert in human anatomy, you don't even know which muscles are involved in this movement. So how could you have commanded them? You knew you were lifting your right arm, and it went up. Your knowing was your only contribution. Your body did the rest. Maybe you believe that your brain commanded your muscles. Your body comprises about 35 trillion cells. Every behavior arises from the perfectly coordinated cooperation of these 35 trillion cells. You can visualize this number as follows. We are about 8 billion people on this planet. On 4,500 planets like Earth, there would be 35 trillion people. How could so many people work together as perfectly as your cells permanently do? Your arm went up as soon as you had the thought. The very idea that the brain directs 35 trillion cells to execute the thought is absurd. Also, who knew he raises his right arm? You are not your brain, and your brain is not the source of your thoughts. As I explain in my article, thoughts are not products of the brain. So why did your right arm go up? The answer is, your cells know what you know and collectively execute your knowing. To understand this answer, you need a new perspective of yourself. Imagine a school of fish. The school behaves as a single organism because each fish behaves in the interest of the school. Traditional science cannot explain this. The answer cannot be found on the physical level. You find it on the non-physical level that is ignored by traditional science. Some call this world spirit or mind. I explain and describe the non-physical world in my article. There is more than just the universe. In the physical world, things are separate from each other, such as the individual fish in a school of fish. In the non-physical world, all is interconnected. That is why I call this world EL, or EL, as an abbreviation for entanglement at large. More about this in my article, Why and How Everything is Interconnected. EL is the fabric knowing is made of. Besides thoughts, this also includes feelings, perceptions, programs, and intuitions. Your body is in the physical world. Your knowing, and thus your consciousness, is in the non-physical world, EL. The individual fish in a school of fish are interconnected in EL. They form a swarm knowing and have a swarm awareness in EL. Swarm behavior arises from this. This applies to all groups, such as herds and colonies. If you have a pet or a plant, you can observe this. You and your animals or plants are a group and interconnected in EL. Your animals or plants know what you know. They know your feelings and your thoughts and react to them. That is empathy. You also know what they know. But most of the time, your thoughts and programs distort or block your empathy. I once did an experiment with a cactus that usually produces a single flower once a year. I chose the thought that it grows a flower and held that thought for some time. And the cactus grew a flower within 2 weeks. As this could have been coincidence, I repeated the experiment. I knew it grow another flower. And indeed, over the next 2 weeks, it grew even 2 more flowers, as if to say, do you finally believe it? Back to you. Your body is a swarm of 35 trillion cells. These cells behave collectively as your body. This includes collectively performing your knowing, such as lifting an arm. You could argue that your cells are physically connected and that many behaviors come from programs encoded in the genes and nervous system. This is true and explains the automatic part of your behavior, such as metabolism and heartbeat. Behaviors such as raising an arm or speaking do not arise in this way. A fish also is a swarm of cells, and part of its behavior comes from the programs in its genes and nervous system, that is, it arises in the physical world. Its behavior as a member of the school of fish arises in the non-physical world, eel. Why does the school of fish behave the way it does? It belongs to a biotope that is also home to many other living creatures. This biotope is a group in which everyone fulfills their purpose as part of the whole. This includes countless predator-prey relationships. In the non-physical world eel, there is an order to all things. This order is aptly named cosmos, because cosmos is the Greek word for order. The cosmos ensures, one could say metaphorically, that everything in the universe functions and thrives together. For example, that cells find food even though they have no sensory organs. Plants develop protective mechanisms when new predators appear. Animals find a new territory when the old one no longer provides for their livelihood. Migratory birds fly to warmer regions to spend the winter. The cosmos urges everything in the universe to fulfill its purpose as part of the whole, a small whole such as a living being or swarm, as well as a large whole such as a biotope or the planet Earth. Intuition is the connection of a living being to the cosmos. More, in my article, intuition is much more than just the sixth sense. Everything intuitively knows what it needs to know in order to fulfill its purpose as part of the whole. An impressive example was the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean. Animals that would have been affected moved to higher ground in good time. We are also connected to the cosmos. Why didn't people flee? We have a tool that sets us apart from animals, the mind. An animal follows its intuition unconditionally, unless it is prevented from doing so. Humans can choose not to follow their intuition, and often do because programs and thinking can block intuition. This can cost lives, as I explain in my article, Why 230,000 people died in the tsunami, but almost no animals. But even without intuition, people could have saved themselves. Seeing that the animals were leaving their riverbanks would have been reason enough to follow them. If you raise your right arm, you have changed the course of events. When a dog reacts to its owner's thoughts, the owner has changed the course of events. The so-called butterfly effect comes into play here. Minor changes can bring about big changes in the long term. You may have heard that the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can trigger a tornado in Texas. Thinking is the root of all creation. It is a person's true power, but hardly anyone is aware of it. It is easiest to recognize the power of your thoughts in your body. Your body follows some thoughts immediately, such as raising an arm or speaking. Some thoughts it follows slowly, such as changing your heartbeat. This takes longer because the thought combines with the automatic control of the heartbeat. Therefore, you must hold this thought longer and more intensely for it to have a material effect. You also influence healing processes. If an animal gets injured, it heals according to the biophysical laws, and it will intuitively behave in a way that supports the healing process. It may rest or feed on certain herbs. If you injure yourself in the same way, your wound could heal in the same way, and you could also intuitively know what supports the healing. However, your thoughts also have an influence. Optimistic thoughts, such as believing in the benefits of a therapy, accelerate the healing process up to the point of a miraculous healing. Pessimistic thoughts, such as doubt, slow it down to the point of incurability. These phenomena are known as the placebo and nocebo effects. By thinking, you create. Since you are almost always thinking when you are awake, you are almost always creating, on a small and large scale, both for yourself and for everything else. You cannot not create. Therefore, everyone has a responsibility, whether they are aware of it or not. Everyone has responsibility for everything, simply because all is interconnected. It is therefore useful to get into the habit of having a mindset of connectedness with everything. That alone changes your thinking and therefore your behavior. But there is a catch. Over 99% of your thinking comes from programs. Over 99% of what you think is what you have learned to think. Schools and the media play a central role in this. Therefore, over 99% of the time, you create what you have learned to create. When you free yourself from your programs, you can become a master of your thinking and thus a more responsible creator. I explain how to do this in my article, How to Become What You Truly Are in 7 Steps, and in my book, Being Free, Get Out of the Box. Finally, 3 exercises. Exercise 1. Imagine your body as a swarm of 35 trillion cells that you control with your knowing. What does this mean in concrete life situations? Exercise 2. Analyze examples of placebo and nocebo effects that you have experienced yourself or observed in others. Exercise 3. Analyze examples of social interactions where you or the other person knew more than what was physically communicated.